It's very good to have you with us at this hour. I'm Daniel Choy with this Sunday evening's edition of Arirang News. Let's dig our heels into a realm that's not doing really stellar these days, the Korean economy. The country's finance minister, Choi Kyung-hwan, says the government, the presidential office, and the political parties should work together to pull the economy out of its low-growth rut. Choi's comments came during a meeting with all three groups on Sunday. He went on to say that he'd like to see tangible progress in efforts to reform the pension program for public officials, and also added that economic revitalization bills pending at the National Assembly should be passed immediately. Yet another warning from North Korea to the United States regarding its ongoing military drills with South Korea. The North has vowed to launch a nuclear attack should even a spark from the training exercises land on North Korean soil. The North's main newspaper, the Nodong Shinmun, reported Sunday that Pyongyang is locked onto Seoul and Washington's presidential offices and is ready to launch a precision strike at will. It went on to say that this is the North's final warning and that the two allies will be responsible for a nuclear war should they continue to ignore the warnings. The reclusive regime has been issuing near-daily threats of retaliation against the regularly scheduled U.S. and South Korea drills and has twice fired missiles off its east coast. The South Korea-U.S. training exercise is slated to end on April 24th. Staying on the topic of North Korea, Pyongyang has slammed Seoul for making preparations for unification through absorption, raising concerns that strained inter-Korean ties could be headed further downhill. The North says it will not deal with South Korean officials unless a South Korean committee charged with preparing for unification is dismantled. Our Kim Min-ji has this report.
North Korea has condemned South Korea for alleged efforts to unify the two Koreas through absorption. The North is referring to recent comments made by Chung Jong-uk, a vice chairman of Seoul's Presidential Committee for Unification Preparation, who said that unification through absorption was an option. Chung also said there is a study group looking into the possibility. He later denied the remark, saying his choice of words was inappropriate. The Committee for the Peaceful Reunification of the Fatherland, which handles inter-Korean affairs in the North, said that North Korea will not deal with South Korean authorities unless Seoul's Presidential Advisory Committee is disbanded, adding that unification through absorption is a daydream. It also demanded that South Korean President Park Geun-hye clarify her position on the issue. Some experts have voiced concern, saying that Pyongyang could use this as a leverage in future talks with the South. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
And moving over to the diplomatic realm, U.S. Assistant Secretary of State Daniel Russell and China's Assistant Minister of Foreign Affairs Liu Jianchao will both be in Korea this week for discussions on regional affairs and issues of mutual interest. Russell arrives Monday for a two-day visit. He will meet with senior officials, including Deputy Foreign Minister Lee Kyung-soo. Liu's four-day visit started Sunday, and he will meet with his South Korean counterpart, Lee Kyung-soo. A foreign ministry official told Yonhap News the hottest topic of debate would be China's move to set up the Asia Infrastructure Investment Bank, seen as a counterbalance to the U.S.-Japan-led Asian Development Bank, and also the possible deployment of the THAAD U.S. missile defense system in Korea, which China strongly opposes. And we have more coming from China. If Japanese leaders could correct their view of the country's wartime past, it would open the way for growth in China-Japan relations. That's according to Chinese Premier Li Keqiang, who addressed reporters at a news conference on Sunday. Li added that since this year marks the 70th anniversary of the end of World War II, China-Japan relations now face both a test and an opportunity. He went on to stress that the problem is Japan's view of its wartime history, saying it is the responsibility of national leaders to face up to their country's past. The Chinese premier says progress in this area could lay a firmer foundation for the development of bilateral trade and economic cooperation between the two countries. Unfortunately, Japan is not showing any signs of accepting history as it is, but rather trying to work their way towards having their version being reflected for the next generation. The Japanese government will provide over $15 million to fund Japanese studies at top U.S. universities, and it has seemingly an ulterior motive. Yonhap News Agency reported Sunday, citing diplomatic sources in Washington, The Massachusetts Institute of Technology and Georgetown University will receive $5 million each from the Japanese government. Japan will also allocate roughly $200,000 to the Japan Foundation for cultural exchanges. 6 universities in the U.S. and elsewhere will also benefit from it. The move is being seen as an attempt by Japan to try and water down its wartime past. The Japanese government was recently turned down by U.S. publisher McGraw-Hill Education, which was asked to change a description of the so-called comfort women, the euphemism for women's forced into sexual slavery during wartime, in one of its textbooks. Moving on to international news, unfortunately, this is a rather disturbing development elsewhere around the world. The first shipment of aid have arrived to the Pacific island nation of Vanuatu, which was hit with a massive cyclone over the weekend that left a horrific trail of death and destruction. A state of emergency has been declared and global aid agencies are gearing up to help. Australia and New Zealand have pledged assistance along with the UK and the UN. But relief efforts have been hampered as authorities struggle to gauge the extent of the damage, with communications down. Winds of more than 300 kilometers per hour tore through the country Friday and Saturday, destroying homes and crops and bringing down trees and power lines. At least 8 people have been confirmed dead and at least 20 injured, but the death toll is expected to rise dramatically as rescuers reach outlying islands. Vanuatu is among the world's poorest countries, and unfortunately, it is one of the countries that's highly prone to natural disasters. Let's shift gears to a different story now, back to the Korean economy. Korea's economic growth fell short of the G20 average for a 4th straight year in the year 2014, with little sign that the sluggish pace of growth will pick up this year. And our Hwang Ji reports there are growing concerns that the low growth trend could continue for a while.
The Korean economy continues to fail to outperform the average growth posted by G20 countries. Recent data from the OECD shows that Korea grew at a slower pace than the G20 average for a 4th straight year in 2014. That's the longest streak for Asia's 4th largest economy. In the years between 1999 and 2010, Korea fell short of the G20 average only 2 times, in 2003 and 2005. While the International Monetary Fund expects the Korean economy to grow faster this year than in 2014 by 3.7%, major economic data released so far this year shows that pace of growth might be hard to obtain. Korea's output, consumption, and exports were all down this year. The Bank of Korea recently cut its key interest rate to a historic low of 1.75% as a way of propping up the ailing economy. But the rate cut also points to a need for a trim of the central bank's new growth forecast for the economy this year, set to be released next month. The BOK currently expects the domestic economy to grow 3.4% this year. Now the attention is focused on the effects that the rate cut and the government's stimulus measures could have on boosting the domestic economy. A local research institute says the government's measures to prop up the economy will raise the country's growth rate by over 0.3 percentage points. Hwang Ji, Arirang News.
We move on to some positive developments now, some science and tech news, rather. Korean researchers have come up with new technology in the field of micro-encapsulation that could change the future of the display panel industry in Korea and how we view the world on our TVs and our smartphones. Our Choi Kyung-hwan has more.
Screen displays are important components of devices we use every day, like smartphones, laptops, and TVs. Often we stare at two-dimensional images on these screens. But a team of experts at the Korea-U.S. Institute of Science and Technology have developed technology that they say will help viewers see images three-dimensionally.
We use molecular engineering to create rubber-covered microcapsules that can move around in liquid and change shape and color, making displayed images look three-dimensional.
They say their technology, which microcapsules photonic crystals, can be used for next-generation reflective-type color displays that can bend or fold. What's more, these microcapsules have characteristics that allows them to change colors based on varying temperatures, which would result in a more brilliant display panel. The team expects the technology will take off in the flexible display market, which is estimated to reach some $4 billion in 2018, and it doesn't stop there.
Not only can we make flexible displays using the microcapsule technology, but we can also use it for microlasers and special paints.
The KAIST team's research on microcapsulating technology was published in the scientific journal Advanced Materials. Choi Kyung-hwan, Arirang News.
Now it's time for weather. It is safe to dress lighter than before. If you're in Seoul, Seoul will have a daytime high of 16 degrees Celsius on Monday. Down south, the mercury shoots up to 22. It will be a warm and dry week overall, except for possible showers in the middle of the country and the middle of the week. So try and arm yourself with umbrellas or raincoats during that time of the week. And now let's move out to outside of Korea, in other parts of the world, and maybe in your neck of the woods. And that's all we managed to squeeze into this newscast. Thank you so much for watching. For more, do join us again at 10 p.m. Korea time. Until then, goodbye for now.